This edition of MacVoices is supported by Audible Plus. Visit audible.com/MacVoices or text MacVoices to 500-500 to start your free 30-day trial. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Meditation made simple. Visit headspace.com/MacVoices for a free 1-month trial. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is going to be just a kind of a fun episode. We want to show you the difference in webcams based on an article that Jeff Carlson wrote for Reincubate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll show you some of the difference, because I'm afraid there's this perception out there that a webcam is a webcam is a webcam. And, you know, I don't have to spend $100 and something. I can just get this $19.95 and it'll be fine. And not quite so much. Yeah. So first, Jeff, welcome. It's great to have you. And thanks so much for doing this.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Well, I really appreciate it. We talked about this and said, you know, this would be just a fun thing to do. So I'm going to let you start off by describing how you became involved with Reincubate, and Camo.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
Okay, sure. So, this is the disclaimer part of this conversation, because I was connected to the folks at Reincubate. They do various software for Mac and iOS. And I ended up writing an article for them that I think we did some episodes on, just talking about like how to look good on a webcam. And, because if you recall back, 9 months ago, suddenly, with the pandemic and the lockdown, suddenly everybody realized, I need something to do video meetings. I'm working from home. There's school, it's happening at home. And, there was just this immediate demand for webcams. And to the point where actually, like, it was almost impossible to buy a webcam. Like, they were all back ordered and whatever. And, you might think, okay, well, that's not really a big deal if you own a laptop, any sort of modern laptop. You've got a little camera in the lid. So, like, there are options, but none of them are really any good. And so Reincubate, they started working on this software called Camo. And what that does is it allows you to use an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad even, basically an iOS device with a camera, and use that as your webcam. And the advantages of that are, there are many advantages to that. One, just the cameras are just better. Apple has put in literally billions of dollars of research over the past several years to make really good cameras to catch really good images on their smartphones. I mean, it's one of the big selling points for any smartphone maker. And so you already have this amazing camera in your pocket. Well, maybe you can put that to use. And so Camo basically lets you do that. So they asked me to write a couple of articles. I wrote one about how to look good on a video call or a video chat. Because even though I think for a lot of us, a built-in camera is fine, it like does the trick, but there are other people who, they're conducting, discussions in business, and like they need to do presentations and look good and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, we did those, and I really liked how they turned out. And then a little while later, Reincubate, they came to me and they were like, we have this idea for an article, and let's see if this matches what you think and what your experience was. And basically, the idea is all webcams are kind of terrible. I mean, there are, a wide range of prices and quality and manufacturers. You can get a 4K webcam for like $50 that doesn't actually have a brand name. It was made in China somewhere, and it'll work, but it's not gonna really look very good. But the other thing was some of the like top picks of like the best webcams, they're kind of crappy too. And so the idea was, okay, like why is this so? Why is it that the Logitech C920, which if you do a search for, which webcam should I buy, consistently comes to the top of the lists? And I want to say, I would have to look at the article again, but this is a webcam that's like 6, 7, 8 years old, and nothing has really changed in it. And that's the best we can do. Or you can get something like the Logitech Brio, which came out a couple of years ago, and it's got 4K resolution, and it's $200, and $200 was like the retail price. When I started writing these articles, you couldn't get one for less than like $350. So well, that must be the professional one, the good one. So maybe that's the one I need to get. And you know what? It's not very good either. And so the question was why? Like why are all these webcams kind of junky? And so that's what they said. Let's write an article that just kind of looks into, why all of these things are so bad. Part of it, true, is to say, hey, look, camo is a better alternative, and going to be totally straightforward. They paid me to write this and all that, but it completely matched my experience. Excuse me. But part of it too is, why, for this market that's been around for quite a while, why is there no innovation? Why do you have such a good camera on your phone, and the things that are like dedicated standalone cameras, if you don't have a laptop or you don't have a computer that has a built-in camera, why are they also bad? So what started out as this kind of, cheeky idea, turned into this long article about okay, what's going on underneath here? And why are they so bad? So that's what we published.
So let's be real here. We're real clear here now. Reincubate is not sponsoring this show. They have not asked us to do this. This is something you and I talked about. And you're right. We had talked about some of this previously, and there'll be some overlap with that. But the idea was to try to do a side-by-side comparison. And listen, I've used since you mentioned the C920, I used the C920 for a long time, and it was a fine choice given the choices I had. It definitely was better than the built-in, and things have evolved and moved on. And as you said, depending on what your use case is, if you just want the grandma and the kids to see each other across the country, pretty much anything is fine. But if you're in a professional environment, then you may want to look a little more professional. So much can depend on the lighting and on your environment there.
Oh, yeah.
Microphones and sound are a whole different topic, and we won't even be touching that because, most of these webcams come with some kind of built-in microphone. Yeah. And that's a whole discussion we won't be touching. So we're just going to talk about the video part. And Jeff has set up 3 cameras. If I were listening to this show, these are the things I would want to know. All the cameras are approximately the same distance from Jeff's face. They are all obviously using the same lighting in the room. So what you're going to see is what you would get if you recreated some of Jeff's circumstances. Now, we understand that you won't be able to necessarily do that, but you got to,
you can't come to my house and set up.
But you got to set a baseline somewhere. So
definitely.
As we start, Jeff looks really good. There's a lot of warm tones to the face and the background. The lighting right back by the rocket ship is sort of a yellowish gold. That's probably a sentence that's never been said before. The lights behind the rocket ship are yellowish gold. And you can get an idea of the field of vision that you have with this particular camera. And Jeff, what are you using right now?
So right now, excuse me. So right now, I have an iPhone SE, an iPhone SE 2, basically the SE that was released last year. And it is using its single rear-facing camera. So that's, Apple calls this a wide camera. And on the SC2, it's the only camera. This is the consumer model. And it's running the latest version of Reincubate Camo. And there's an app on the phone that runs, and then it's connected by a cable to my MacBook Pro. And then there's an app on the Mac called Camo Studio, which, the two of them work together.
Right. In Camo Studio, since I'm familiar with it, have you adjusted anything, or are these just the default settings?
That is a very good question. And the answer, these are the default settings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this
which was actually which was actually one of the points that I think I'm going to make through here. There are ways that you can mess with exposure and white balance and all of that kind of stuff. And for the most part in the article, I wanted to stay away from that. Not to sort of handicap anything, but just to kind of show that, for something like a webcam, where you pretty much just plug it in and you go. You plug it in, and whatever software you're using, you say, okay, use this camera. I wanted that experience of, like this is what you're going to get. Now, if you really needed to mess with things, you can improve the image a bit, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But I was trying to envision sort of the normal person who, they just need to have Zoom meetings with their work colleagues, and they're not here to, like, oh, I need to set myself up with a broadcast studio, right? So there's that scale of, yes, you can absolutely go and do something super professional, or you can, just be a normal person who just needs a webcam. So right. I should also point out that in terms of lighting in the room, I have a window here, and it has just like a light curtain on it just to diffuse the light, because today's especially, it's been the day like the sun has come out, so like blow me completely out and then get dark, and then I have an LED panel right up here that's kind of providing the main light. So it's not just the room light, and we can do a few comparisons. I'll turn this off when we talk about lighting, and that'll make a big difference. So just to kind of get the parameters out there, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing too, I want to reiterate that, we didn't, Jeff intentionally didn't pick like the iPhone 12, the latest and greatest. It was it's a year old, and it's one of the, at least arguably, lower models, if you will. It's not the most expensive thing you can get. And yet this is the kind of image you get out of that.
Yeah. And in fact, I'll also point out in the article, one of the sources that I used, I found an iPhone 6 on eBay or something, and even that, in many cases, did better than some of these. And that's, I want to say, what is it, 5-6 years old by now? And so what's nice about that possibility is, I don't have to have the phone that I carry with me all the time and then set that up whenever I want to make a video call. You can take last year's model, some hand-me-down, something with a cracked screen that still works, and stick it on a little mount and just use that. So
yeah, but it's a really interesting point, because other than getting the application launched, after that, there's really nothing to do. So
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
All right, so now we're going to switch cameras, and I'm not sure which one you're going to go to, but I'll let you switch away. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Audible and their new Audible Plus. Visit audible.com/MacVoices or text the word MacVoices to 500-500 to start your free 30-day trial. What did you read today? What are you going to read tomorrow? With Audible and their new Audible Plus package, you don't have to visit the library or wait for your next book to be delivered. Just fire up the app, Select from their Plus catalog of thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and Audible original productions, and you're on your way. Audible connects you with a ton of content that entertains, inspires, and informs. So whether you are in the mood for a little escapism, a little self-improvement, or something in the way of fitness or personal wellness, Audible Plus has you covered. I recently listened to Craig Ferguson's Hobo Fabulous, a laugh-out-loud performance that I probably would never have heard without Audible Plus. And in these challenging times, anything that makes you laugh is pure gold. Whether you listen while working from home, exercising, or just relaxing, Audible and Audible Plus make it easy to find and enjoy new content. Start your Audible journey today by visiting audible.com/MacVoices or texting the word MacVoices to 500-500 to start your free 30-day trial. That's 30 days of access to an amazing catalog of content that you're going to love. Audible.com/MacVoices or text MacVoices to 500-500. That's 500-500. Thanks to Audible for their support of MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Meditation made simple. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can reduce stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and increase your overall sense of well-being. How do they do all that? Through their easy-to-use app, you can access a variety of mindful meditations. Those can be as short as a quick 3-minute SOS meditation to something much more elaborate. I've really appreciated their approach to meditation. Like you, I'm busy and can find it difficult to set aside time to take care of myself, especially if it involves lengthy rituals or study. Headspace solves that problem by giving me a practical, efficient approach to meditation. Fire up the app, select from the guided meditations or videos, and you're on your way to a better you. I find that, unlike things I've tried in the past, I look forward to a little Headspace time. Headspace is also one of the only meditation apps that is advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. Backed by 25 published studies, and with over 60 million downloads and 600,000 5-star reviews, you can be assured that Headspace should be your choice for getting started or restarted with meditation as part of your routine. You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/MacVoices. That's headspace.com/MacVoices for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. That's the best deal offered right now, so head over to headspace.com/MacVoices today. Thanks to Headspace for their support of MacVoices.
I will start. Let's go with the worst. The Logitech C920, and it's kind of a random thing, or it's an unintentional thing that both other cameras I have here are made by the company Logitech. I'm not here to beat up on Logitech. I tested a couple of others. It's just Logitech. When it comes to third-party webcams, like, they're really kind of dominant in the space. So, all right. And of course, because this is Skype, I may disappear or my picture will show up or something. It might take a second for it to change. So, okay. So this is the Logitech C920, still listed as one of the best, like the top webcam that you can get. And speaking as a photographer, this is garbage. Speaking as someone who, would casually do, video calls and stuff, this is still garbage. So, a few things to notice. The whole scene is very cool. There are lots of blues. And the C90 really has a hard time with bright lights. I mean, like, my forehead is probably entirely white. The window behind me, it's kind of mostly white. I think just because it's a cloudy day outside, that actually is like steps to a deck. So that's what that angle is. It's just not flattering or favorable at all. And, like, the best thing I can say about this, other than the fact that it is showing an image, is that, it's pointed at me, and, you're not just looking at like this much of my head, which sometimes happens when you're doing video calls, right? it surprises me. This retails, I want to say, for $80. Yeah, $80, which is, I mean, that's real money for a webcam. Connects via USB, and I don't know, it's garbage, and it surprises me that so many lists and publications and stuff say that this is the one. I suspect it's because it is the most dominant one. And I think because, and here's one of the things that I found, answering that question, why are webcams so bad? And by all means, Chuck, interrupt me if I'm going off on too far of a tangent. Like to answer one of the questions, I think it's because until this year, webcams have been a small niche product, right? Because either you had something in your computer that was acceptable enough, and in a lot of ways, even like I said, the MacBook Pro that I have, this is a 2019 model, so it's just over a year old, and the webcam that it has is not really good at all. But if you needed a webcam, you were probably like occasionally using it, or you didn't have a computer, like maybe you have like a tower Windows PC desktop, something. And so like the market just wasn't really very big. And so my suspicion is these companies, they didn't really have a lot of incentive to really innovate in this market because, hey, we've got a camera, it takes pictures, it does audio, it's got stereo audio or what have you. It was just a small pond. And it really wasn't until this year when suddenly so many people needed some sort of video webcam solution that it just brought this into relief. Now, one of the things about the market, there's also pretty much if you wanted to go anywhere beyond this in webcams, you were likely into like the gaming scene where you're on Twitch, you're playing video games live, and you want to have a split screen where part of the screen is the game that you're playing, and part of the screen is a camera pointed at you, so that people can see what your reactions are. Or you can talk to the camera. You're talking to the people who are following along, and there are definitely advances kind of directed to that crowd. But even so, I don't think the manufacturers really took it seriously. The other camera that I have here, the Brio, is sort of more along the lines of like, this is what you would have in your professional office. There's one that I reviewed, the one that I compared in this article, the Razer Kaio, which is kind of interesting. It has its own little ring light in the front of it, but the image quality was a little bit better, and like it had like weird focusing problems, and we have to take into consideration the use case, because I think even if you're talking about gaming, where you have people who are more technical, more into frame rates and refresh rates and things like that, in most cases they just were going to be a tiny little square in the corner of the picture. So you really didn't need great resolution. You didn't really need a whole lot of high quality aspect to it, because it was an afterthought.
So a couple things from the viewer perspective and from the non-photographer perspective. Okay, I don't completely agree that it's garbage, because I think it is better, and I say that for a couple reasons. First of all, it's definitely better than the built-in webcams that you get. The frame rate is better, and I think some of the light handling is definitely better. Even though you're a little blown out at the moment, I think the light handling is better. also, when you were pointing to the one curtain where you said the sun was coming in and washing you out, that one, we couldn't even see that in the other one. So we have a much wider field of view here.
Right. Yeah.
And that may be important in a situation where you are in a conference room or something like that, and you're trying to capture the length of a boardroom table, or a whole lot of people, or something of that nature. So there's some definite advantages to this, and I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it or not. Whether we want to turn out a light and see how it reacts, or talk about some of the software that you can use to make this a little better. What you tell me?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with software first, because yes, there are things that you can do to make this better. Logitech has software that will let you, go in and, I could go in and warm this up. I could bring back the exposure, things like that. It's a very rudimentary software, and I don't think that I will get in any trouble by saying that Logitech software is kind of hit or miss. It's not great. There's another app. And I want to say I think it's just called Webcam Settings.
Yes.
The third party that you can get at the App Store that does a little bit better job. So you can absolutely take this and adjust it. I know that with the Logitech software, and I would have to revisit this before I gave it 100% seal of approval for what I'm about to say. But for a long time, you could make all those adjustments. But as soon as you quit the software, they would get wiped out. So every time you use the camera, you'd have to, reset those or load a profile. And just terribly unfriendly in terms of, user interface and user workflow. All right. If you do nothing else, let's say, you have somebody who has an extra webcam and they give it to you, you don't have to pay for it, or you found a $40 model. I think this is something that will apply universally. Even the worst webcam, if you give it enough light, will give you an acceptable picture. And this is something that I found, I knew this already, not just because I know light in photography, but also just from some of my experiments writing the earlier articles. But if you have enough light, the cameras love it, and they can actually do more. If you don't have enough light, and even I say enough light, you may think that you're in a pretty bright room. Well, the camera might not see it that way. And then they start to struggle. Then they try to boost the ISO levels so that the sensitivity of the sensor gets pumped up, but then it gets noisy and choppy. There are all sorts of things that happen. So if you have no other recourse and you're saddled with your brother's free webcam that he's not using anymore, if you put enough light on yourself, it's going to help immeasurably. So let's turn this off. And so a few things happen. I would say, and of course, I'm just looking at Skype's little tiny preview here. But this side of my face is still really white, blown out. The window behind me is even more blown out. If I wanted to realistically, I'd probably draw a shade there, but I left it open just as the example. And I think somebody who's looking at this would be like, okay, yeah, well, it's a window. Who cares what's out there? But it's also really distracting because, you're trying to focus on me, and what you're seeing is, this giant, it takes up maybe, an eighth of the picture over here. So that's just kind of distracting. I think because it's mid-afternoon here, there's still plenty of light coming in through the window. This isn't terrible, but if we were to record this maybe even 30 minutes, 60 minutes later, this camera would really, really have a hard time. And I have examples in that article, by the way. If you're thinking, I haven't seen enough pictures of Jeff Carlson lately, go through this article because I took a lot of screenshots in different lighting situations and what have you.
Right.
Turn this back on.
Now, I'll just make a couple observations though for when the light was out. You definitely, you weren't blown out on one side of the face. The blue cast was definitely gone. The skin looks a lot more like skin as opposed to just poster board.
Yeah.
I think the whole scene looks better. So that light might be overpowering that camera a little bit because, you're right. You give enough light, it helps, but you can obviously give things too much light. So, so that's why, again, and that may be advantageous for your personal situation wherever you are. If you're not going to set up a studio with LEDs or whatever. So, it's again, and, I get caught here. You're buying the webcam and, there's some electronics to it to make it work as a webcam. The iPhone has to have, in this case, camo. It has to have some intervening software to turn it into a webcam, but it is definitely it's just a better camera, period. I mean, you spend $80 on a camera and you're not going to get a great camera. You're going to get a good camera, but it's not going to be a great camera. You're spending quite a bit more as part of the iPhone. So,
well, and also part of the iPhone too is you're also getting a lot of Apple's digital processing technology. So, the camera, even though, it's just basically a live feed, it's still doing a lot of that dynamic range. It's accounting for, the light and focusing. Like you just have Apple's software that's dedicated just to improving what comes into the lens. Like that's all just working for you in addition to that. So, that's an advantage. With this Logitech, I think part of the issue is it's a very tiny sensor, and it's a very old sensor. And so it's just not going to collect the type of light, even though an iPhone camera, has a very tiny sensor. It's more modern technology, and so I think like that comes into play. Granted, we're starting to split hairs here, so I don't want to get too far away from this one has the X43 and the other one has the X42, and so you can't tell that like there's definitely a level of pixel peeping here as there is in photography, and so I don't want to go off the deep end and say wow, I would never touch anything that had this a sensor that's older than 3 years.
No, but
you get the point, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love to make the analogy with cars. If you had a 6, 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old car, compared with something that's being driven off the lot today, or even last year, there's a significant difference. And so if here you are buying, older technology, and at the time it was a huge step up from anything we had then. So for the time it was great. Now maybe not quite so much.
Oh yeah. Last year, my wife and I, we bought a 2013 Subaru, and it has like a built-in GPS thing. And I mean, it's hilarious. I don't even touch it because it's an 8-year-old mapping technology. And of course I'm not going to use that because I've got, something that's 1,000 times better in my phone, but it's kind of the same thing. What amazes me is that these webcam companies are still using a lot of this technology in cameras that are brand new, and I think that's also kind of part of the point of the article. The Logitech Stream Cam, I think, was the most recent in terms of like the equipment and has like the newest technology. And it's definitely better in many regards, especially compared to this, but still fell down in a few places where I was just sort of surprised. I think one thing about this whole sphere, I'm really curious to know if let's say in 6 months or so, if some of this core webcam technology is going to jump in leaps and bounds, because now there's much more of a need for it. Now there's much more of a desire to have just a baseline of higher quality. I don't know if the company's made enough money by having all their stuff sell out for the past year that they want to invest in that, or they might just be like, what works, and this article here says it's the best, so we don't have to, create a factory that will make all new components. We've got these things, like this machine's been stamping out lenses for 8 years and it works great. So,
yeah, you make a really interesting point though, because before, I'm sorry, we have to bring the pandemic into this.
I know.
But, before the pandemic, you could do we were doing some web meetings, whether it was Zoom or Skype or whatever. I mean, you and I have been doing Skype for a long time, but the average worker, the guy who's not the technical people that we are, they just weren't doing it. And now I think because we are doing so much, and so many of us are spending so much more time on these calls, that there is going to be a different appreciation. I mean, it's sort of like going from the 480p TVs to the 720 to the HD, then the Ultra HD or 4K. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's once you see the better one, it's really kind of hard to go back. And I think you're right. I think this may influence things going forward. Our conversation with Jeff Carlson about webcams continues in the next edition, when we get to see a couple more webcam options and what they bring to the table. We unintentionally talk about the audio part of selecting a webcam and get some final thoughts from Jeff on what you should use and why. That's next time on MacVoices. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.